Today, we're cracking open a real court case that honestly plays out more like a detective story. We're talking about a bitter divorce, a fortune supposedly hidden on another continent, and a legal investigation that had to span the globe. Let's get right into it.
So here's the central mystery. Just imagine you're the judge for a second. One person is telling you a multi-million-dollar property is part of the marriage. The other person swears up and down it belongs to their elderly, illiterate father back in their home country. The evidence is a mess. The witnesses are literally on different continents. How on earth do you find the truth?
All right, let's meet the couple at the heart of this storm, Ms. and Mr. Kamyar. After 7 years of marriage, things fall apart, and they need to divide up everything they own. But what should be a pretty standard process hits a massive roadblock, a very valuable property in their home country, which we'll call Country F. And the real problem? One of them says it's not even theirs to divide. You see, they built a life that stretched across 2 continents, and their assets show that. They're all good on the 2 Sydney properties and a couple of plots of land back in Country F. No argument there. But the real fight, the one that's worth almost 700,000 Australian dollars, is all about this one developed house in a place called Town R. This single property, well, it becomes the eye of the storm. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. It is a classic he said, she said. The husband's story is that the house belongs to his father, a man who he says can't even read or write. It's a story about family duty. But the wife? She has a totally different take. She insists this property was their investment, a huge piece of the wealth they built together. 2 completely different realities. So who's telling the truth? Okay, so the battle of words is over. Now it moves to a war of documents. Both Mr. and Mrs. Kamyar march into court armored with paperwork they believe proves their case. And in doing so, they create this incredibly complex puzzle for the judge to try and solve. The husband starts building his case, and it looks pretty strong. First, he's got a sworn statement from his father saying, yep, I bought it. Then he's got a building permit from 2012 to back that up. And then in a dramatic last-minute move, he pulls out his trump card, a brand new formal deed of conveyance from 2024. This thing seems to cement his father's ownership for good. On paper, it looks like an open and shut case. But hold on, the wife fires back with some seriously powerful evidence of her own. She pulls out an official government survey plan from 2015, and guess what? It clearly lists the husband and his sister as the owners. And even better, she found the lawyer back in Country F who actually handled the original purchase. And this right here is the bombshell. The lawyer, Mr. L, states under oath that he dealt directly with the husband and wife. He says he clearly remembers the husband himself walking into his office to pick up that original registered deed. I mean, this testimony doesn't just contradict the husband's story, it completely shatters it. So now you've got this impossible situation. 2 conflicting stories backed by conflicting documents, with key witnesses thousands of miles away. How can an Australian judge possibly verify foreign paperwork? Who do you believe? It's a total stalemate. And this is where the court does something absolutely brilliant. Instead of just guessing or flipping a coin, the court makes a really bold move. It decides, fine, if we can't bring the evidence to us, we'll send our own eyes and ears over there. It literally extends its judicial reach across international borders to get to the bottom of this. The judge appoints what's called a single expert. Think of him as a neutral senior lawyer from Country F, a legal private eye for the court. His mission is crystal clear. Investigate everything. Figure out the local property laws, scrutinize every single document for authenticity, and then report back with his unbiased, expert findings. The entire game has just changed. Now we get to the climax of our story, the final hearing. And this is not your typical courtroom scene. It's a virtual showdown. You've got lawyers, witnesses, and experts all joining by video link from Australia and from Country F. This is where all the cards are laid on the table. Okay, before we get to the tick-down, you need to understand one key legal idea from Country F. It's called root of title. The expert explained that in this country, just having a registered document isn't enough, not even close. What really matters is the history. You need a legitimate, unbroken chain that shows how ownership passed from person to person. Without a clean root of title, your claim is basically worthless. And this is where that expert just systematically dismantles the husband's last-minute 2024 deed. He points out these fatal flaws. First, the deed claimed the seller had the property for 10 years, which is impossible since we know the husband owned it in 2015. Second, get this, the building permit was applied for after it was issued. That makes no sense.
And finally, the document itself just looked weird, like two different pages scanned together. It wasn't just flawed, it was completely falling apart under scrutiny.
So after hearing all of this from the expert, the judge's conclusion was just devastatingly simple. He found that the husband's key piece of evidence, that 2024 deed, was, and I quote, not an authentic conveyance. And with that one sentence, the husband's entire story just collapsed.
So the truth about the overseas asset is finally out. But how did the court end up dividing everything? And, maybe more importantly for us, what can we all learn from this incredible story? Well, the court didn't just split things 50-50. It landed on a 60-40 split in favor of the wife. And there was a reason for that. 55% was for her slightly greater contributions during the marriage, and they added an extra 5% to account for her future needs, since she was the primary caregiver for their two young kids. To actually make that 60-40 split happen in the real world, the wife was ordered to take over the Sydney properties and pay the husband a final settlement of just over $309,000. The idea was to create a clean financial break so they could both finally move on. Okay, so the first huge takeaway here is this. Geography is not a shield. This case sends a really clear message that courts can and will investigate assets anywhere in the world. The idea that you can hide property just because it's in another country, that's a very, very risky gamble. Second, and this is so important, never underestimate the price of a lie. The husband's attempt to mislead the court with what was found to be inauthentic evidence cost him everything. Once a judge decides you're not credible, they're probably not going to believe anything else you say. In court, honesty isn't just the best policy, it's pretty much the only one. And finally, you have to understand who your most powerful allies are in a situation like this. It's not family members who have a personal stake in the outcome. It's independent experts and clear, written records. The wife's case was so strong because she had official documents and professional testimony. So keep your paperwork. Seriously. One day, it could be your most important weapon. You know, this whole case was a battle over an invisible asset, but it reveals a very visible truth. In our crazy, interconnected world, transparency and integrity are your absolute greatest protection. So it really leaves us with one last thought. After hearing this whole story, how secure are your own assets?